Good morning or good afternoon, I guess. My name is Paul Sterling. I'm the CTO for Mold Inspection Sciences, which is a bit of a glorified title for what I do every day, actually. But that's what it is. We do environmental testing for things like molds and other environmental toxins. And most recently, we've been doing a lot of testing around SARS-CoV-2 virus. That's the one that causes COVID-19. So it's kind of interesting to see how much of it is actually out in the environment. Spoiler, not that much. So there you go. Right. And I want to talk a little bit about how we use Umbraco as the center of our marketing technology stack, which is a really fancy way of saying how we're trying to use all of our marketing stuff in Umbraco rather than having a bunch of different tools. So when we started this idea of wanting to have a more robust marketing program back in early 2018, we didn't really know what our marketing program was going to look like. So it was kind of hard to choose a tool. And so at that time, there were some suites out there, things like HubSpot or Salesforce, of course, but nothing Umbraco specific, which was what our web platform was already. We definitely had some, one-off tools here and there, and they worked pretty well. But we knew that whatever we were going to have in the future, even though we didn't know what that was, we wanted to be able to integrate it with what we already had. And since we didn't know what was going to work, we wanted the ability to try different stuff. So for us, we went down this idea of, and I kind of hate the term, but it describes it pretty well, but this idea of best of breed, where we knew we were going to have a collection of different tools that we were going to try and tie together, rather than kind of going down the road of a all-in-one suite. So I went to my team and I basically said, hey, we need a marketing. I called it an operating system at the time, and the term was just stuck. But we need a marketing OS to create, manage, and measure all our marketing activities and all our marketing channels. Kind of hard to say no to that, and it's also real easy to write it down, but much harder, as I found, to actually make it work. So like most companies, especially service companies, we have this omni-channel, everything from social media to a podcast and a bunch of downloadable PDFs and mobile and all that good stuff. So the idea was we wanted to have a system that would touch all these different points and not have a different tool for every different channel. So that was the idea. And then early on, we also mapped out our customer journey, and the customer journey is just from the time they initially discover what we do and think they need to use us to actually like having us work with them on a project. So this is a typical customer journey for us, and I'm not going to go through every step, don't worry. So I see some people dropping off already. But the idea was for me to figure out, hey, is there a way this marketing OS can help support this journey so that we're not using different tools for every step of the way? And as you can guess, since we're doing digital marketing, of course, it is, right? It's mostly content-based and search engine optimization based and contact based. So it's things like forums and web chat and tracking and all that stuff. So of course, it was a natural fit for something like Umbraco. And of course, there are other systems that would work as well, but we had an internal knowledge of Umbraco already. So it just mapped very nicely onto that customer journey. And then, so at this point I started thinking, well, why don't we just use a CMS and then we'll go get a marketing tool and then those things will kind of work. And I started thinking, like, what is this idea of a marketing operating system and that we needed? And it's definitely a CMS. It's primarily a CMS, and it needed to be a content first CMS. So Umbraco was a great choice there, of course. And there are others, but certainly, like I keep saying, right, we already had this web platform, mostly on Umbraco. But I also felt like it needed to be an integration platform. So it needed to be the kind of, if we were using CMS as a base, it needed to be the kind of CMS that let us integrate different tools with that without being sort of locked into a very specific way. And the way those integrations happen should follow well-known patterns. So I don't know if you've ever worked with Salesforce, but I didn't want a Salesforce sort of approach where you had this like very specific language that was only special to that platform. So something built on like a .NET platform, or it didn't have to be .NET, but you get the idea, right? It's more than just the language for that platform. Needed to have open endpoints, and by that I just meant since we didn't know all the different tools we wanted to integrate with, we needed to have the ability to arbitrarily define endpoints or API endpoints in the future without being sort of locked into a predefined set. We would like for it to have this rich ecosystem. That just means packages and extensions that did extra things that we might need, and as well the ecosystem of developers and agencies, so that we could go out to them if we needed something bespoke for it to be built. We wanted to be cloud-based. We had almost no infrastructure at that time, and since then we have zero actual infrastructure in-house. So that was a key thing. And then finally, it needed to have this justifiable cost, and that's just, it didn't have to be free, but it needed to fit within the amount of money we wanted to spend on marketing, which was a percentage of revenue. Incidentally, Umbraco is on the very low end of that kind of cost scale when you look at all the different options here. Something like a HubSpot would be something like 10 to 15 times more expensive for us, at least. And then Umbraco is, for us, it looks like this as our marketing OS, and there's more to it, but this is the high level. It's certainly all of our websites, everything that's regional and blogs and all the supporting stuff. And it's also some tools that are built into the Umbraco back office. One is this reviews and testimonial management tool that works as a back office content editing thing. I'll give you a quick tour of that. Then we have this A/B variant testing tool that's built in version 8. And this was before there was a marketing suite, so there really wasn't a solution for A/B testing at the time we implemented that. And then we have some support for our internal teams for sales, marketing, HR. So there's the ability for them. Interestingly enough, it uses a similar pattern to what Emma was showing with the way they're configuring their, or providing the configuration information for their AI bots. Well, I would say AI bots, but they're learning information. So this is a way just we can store message campaign configuration using Umbraco. There's an idea of a testimonial system. I'll show you that. That's just kind of a nurture system. And then lots of stuff around support. Paperless is our really creative title for the app that our field inspectors actually use on their tablets out in the field. And then finally, we did realize that there were quite a lot of other integration points that didn't make sense to force into Umbraco. And when you have Hammer, everything's like a nail. And of course, Umbraco, we wanted to use it, the single platform, but we found there was quite a lot of logic that should really be external to Umbraco. And also, lots of times didn't make sense for us to integrate a tool directly with Umbraco. So that's where we added this layer of Azure Function Apps. And Azure Function Apps serve as kind of a common platform for integrating Umbraco with whatever arbitrary tool. And it's actually worked out really nice. We have quite a large investment in Function Apps now with quite a good suite of tools. And had I known when we started this what I know now, of course, I would have done a little different architecture, but that's the nature of what we do, I guess. So just some examples of how we're using Umbraco to support things that aren't strictly web content. One is this reviews management. This is just a version 7 nested content piece. And basically what happens here is our reputation is important to us, and that's why we're a more successful organization than a lot of our, say, competitors, because we have this good public reputation. So we invest quite a lot in managing these reviews and making sure that they're front and center, I'd say, in terms of our content. But what happens is when we get a new review, our content team will get notified, and this reviews like things like Google, Yelp, Angie's List, and I'm sure there's loads of other review platforms that are important, and depending on where you are in the world, but those are the big ones for us here in North America. They'll find a new review. They'll grab this review ID, and they have different strategies for where that review ID actually is. Then they'll come into the reviews management tool in the Umbraco back office. They'll do a lookup. And what that lookup does is, depending on the platform, it pulls back all the relevant data and then organizes it in a structured data format. And that way, what we're doing is we're storing reviews from disparate platforms all in a standard format. And then what we can do with that is render it out as an actual front end page so that each review looks the same. And that's interesting and all, but not many people are going to read through 100 reviews on your page. It's just the fact that it's there. And then the more interesting part, though, is that we can use that data then to output structured data. And this is what really helps give us a boost in terms of our search engine rankings and our search positions, which is kind of key to our business. So we push out this aggregate rating. which the search engines then understand, and we show up. That's the part I really love about it, is all of that kind of work gets distilled down into these like 5 lines, really, right, in a structured data format. And that's really all Google cares about in the end, is this. So all of that other content. Another piece is this testimonial system. And the idea here is we're using NPS surveys to help us determine which of our past clients are promoters, the ones that will likely leave us a very good review, versus the ones that are detractors or passives. So you've seen these. I'm sure most people use an NPS survey. But the idea is if they give us a 9 or a 10, we send them one message and it just says, hey, thanks for doing business with us. I'm glad you had a good experience. Would you leave us a review? And we send them this message that directs them right to the review form on Google. It works insanely well. The one thing I'd love to be able to do is to actually like pre-populate this Google review box, but Google does not like that at all. I can tell you from trying it. So anyways, they do that and make it easy for them. Anyways, it's a good way to do it. For us, it works well, and it's a direct correlation between the folks that have told us they like us to actually asking them to leave us a review without having to have a person in the process. And the other part is, right, if you're not a promoter, you didn't give us a 9 or a 10, we send you a different message, and that message does not link to Google. It links to our internal feedback form, and we just want to know more about why didn't you love us, basically. Some people will hate you for different reasons. Of course, this is where that language processing stuff would be really interesting to figure out what the sentiment is here. Is it just something that we messed up on, or did they really think we didn't do a good job? And nice thing here, though, is that we get this feedback and then we can go back to them, and best case scenario, all right, we fix whatever the issue was. If there was just some misunderstanding, we'll send them a follow-up NPS survey, then they become a promoter, and then they leave us a review. So we call that a redemption review. And those are actually the best kind, because those people tend to really go to bat for you reputation-wise. Anyways, all this is managed. The messaging bits here and the feedback forms and the tracking individual reviews that correspond to each of these is all managed as Umbraco content in the back office. Yeah, so why, so far it seems like maybe just kind of what you would do with a CMS, and that's mostly true, I'd say. But why do I keep pushing this term of an OS or an operating system for marketing? And to me, this is it. It's the ability that having something more than just a straight CMS gives you. And so in January this year, we had started migrating our landing page sites to Umbraco version 8 on cloud. And as part of that, I realized there wasn't actually a solution for A/B testing in version 8 at that time in January. And so I asked Umbraco Twitter, and it seemed that I was right, there wasn't one. But I did connect with ProWorks. They're one of the Umbraco Gold partners that I work with quite a lot. And within about a week or so, they had actually created a A/B testing tool in Umbraco version 8. And it's a simple tool, but it worked really well. It gave us exactly what we needed. Basically, the idea here is that at the landing page level, I have a pretty simple content, but we can have like 2 or 3 levels of nested content. Sorry, I'm using the wrong term, of hierarchical content. And then I can create, for each of those types, I can create a variant on that content. And then what I can do is, at the top level, I can select which variants I want to display alongside the other main content. And I do that by providing this weight. And then there's, of course, an algorithm that uses the weight to determine the frequency at which this alternate content gets displayed. And then I have this idea of a goal name, and the goal name just corresponds to the goal name in analytics. And that's how I can measure the relative performance of the variant content versus the main or the original content. So it does use an external tool in the sense that I have to use analytics. That'd be nice if that was all integrated, but this gave me what I wanted. It turned around in a week or so. And for my content folks, it was great because they didn't have to learn a new tool, right? They already know how to use Umbraco back office to create content, and this was the same. So there was no training on my end. And then one of the things I like about it is, even though it's presenting this variant content, it's just using standard Umbraco MVC, right? So I can look at this, I can see exactly what it's doing. I don't have to go learn a new pattern or anything. Of course, the magic happens in that get alternate method. That's the one that uses the weight to actually determine which content's going to be displayed. But I like that you can do this sort of thing with Umbraco, but you still use the same pattern to create it. And so there's no difference when I look at this, I can see what it's doing versus a regular Umbraco child action. Somewhere here, I'm supposed to go to the next screen. There we go. Okay, this is the last one. So the last thing I have is this campaign designer. So we use a system called Intercom for messaging. I'm sure a lot of folks use it. And one of the things that my marketing and sales folks told me is that Intercom has pretty limited in how complex you can make your messaging campaigns. So it's pretty simple. And what they wanted was something a little more sophisticated, a little more complex, with a little more control. And we kind of sketched out this really lovely drawing here. That's kind of how my designs tend to work out. And in the end, what we ended up with was this idea of a campaign designer. So what we do is we can define a campaign, and I guess I have to hit play. We can define a campaign, and then within that campaign, we can define all the messages that make up that campaign. And then within each message, we can define which channels it can get delivered to, things like email, SMS, and that'll define does it go through Intercom or does it go through Twilio or something else, as well as the actual message content, any parameters around it, and finally the delay in sending this message from the time the prior message was sent to each individual recipient. And in Intercom, you kind of set it on days. It's like 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, and they wanted to send it like 22 hours after, because this group was convinced, and they were probably right, that the timing was critical to these things. And so that's what Umbraco let us do. Let us store the configuration here, and then using this configuration, we have an Azure function on timer. Every 5 minutes it checks to see what's up, and then it goes and interfaces with the Intercom API to actually send out these messages. And then Intercom still takes care of tracking all the individuals, and that's our lead management system. So from there, Intercom kind of takes over. But something we could do, and again, my content folks were able to use this without having to learn a new tool or figure out a new way of doing things. And so we're still working within Umbraco back office. And there's tons more too, of course, but that's all we have for now. And I didn't want to take too much time. If you have questions, of course, I guess we have chat in, I don't know where my.
Yeah, so there is a Zoom chat. So there is also a Discord channel as well.
I didn't join up with Discord. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
This morning. So if there's anything there, if you have questions now, otherwise you can definitely. I'll just leave up that on the slide there. You can click through if you have, and I'll be online for a little bit this morning still.
That'd be great. Wonderful. That's really interesting, and it's really interesting how you've kind of managed to apply the Umbraco way of thinking, I suppose, and create a consistent platform to do quite different things, but with that same sort of like mental approach.
Yeah, thanks. I think so. I mean, I have been accused of using Umbraco like a hammer in the past, and that's probably fair. but
I think, yeah. I mean, when it's as flexible as it is, and you can use it even headless or in whichever way I think it makes a lot of sense.
No, exactly. In fact, and like I said, in that last slide, there's a lot more here. And there's one of the last things we're working on right now is we're actually using headless as a tracking system. Mm-hmm. And so we have these projects that are composed of bunches of different steps, like 30 different steps, and it can actually track the steps. And again, it's the same in my organization, which we're pretty small, around 50 people, but it's the same people that do support, that do like answer the phone, right, mm-hmm. for sales. And so they can go to a similar environment. They know how it looks, they know what to look for, they know how to navigate around. It feels like there's a lot of advantages for a small team in particular to using sort of a standard tool, rather than be like, oh, you got to use Zendesk for that, and use Intercom for that, and oh, you use something else for this other thing, which is, we have enough of that as it is, of course, in our day-to-day life. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Wonderful. Sorry, Ravi. Okay.
One quick question is, these are multiple different sites, so they still have different logins, but it's a uniformity of platform.
Yeah, they're all we're all on. Every one of our Umbraco sites is on Umbraco Cloud, so at least it's the same set of credentials. If that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah.
But I do have this grand idea, like a lot of us, of having kind of like one monolithic site and everything's in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, every time.
One day I'll get there.
Yeah, one day.
But now, right now there's like different versions, and there's like, well, I don't want to. Yeah, it doesn't make sense to like put all this stuff together, and And Umbraco, right, is the downside of doing it that way right now, at least, is that if one site's down, all sites are down, because Umbraco runs from one set of runtime code.
Yes.
Yeah, I actually have how do you handle upgrades? Do you do them all at the same time, or do you have like varying versions?
Do. There's two different ways. Real quick, this just takes a sec, but one is all the websites are actually from a baseline, so that's pretty easy. And those are all version 7 still. I haven't not bitten the bullet on version 8. This is just thousands and thousands of page of content. I use a lot of packages, which now I see the folly of. But anyways, and then version 8's easy because I have one landing page site for everything, and then one headless site that I was talking about, that tracking bit. So I can't remember the last time I actually did an upgrade per se. A cloud just kind of does it for me, and I just click the button. So. And it's worked practically every time. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much.
Cheers.
Candid contributions code patch clap.
Thank you.